the White House, as you said, they are aware they have a problem, even if they don't want to explicitly say they have a problem politically because of that lower end consumer. But when you look, one of the ideas being floated by the president is a one-year cap on credit card rates at 10% and somehow getting Congress to compel that. He signed an executive order to limit institutional investors from buying single-family homes. And then he's floated this idea of $2,000 checks, which may or may not require Congress. What do you think about these consumer-focused parts of the plan? Are they viable?
Well, look, I think it's admirable that they're understanding that people are cash trapped today. They're stuck with not enough disposable income. So I think the White House is throwing out ideas that will put more disposable income back in consumers' hands.
These are not ideas you would have endorsed when you were in that advisory
those
role.
ideas probably don't solve the problem. In fact, the credit card rates probably have the opposite effect. So credit card companies charge people a risk-adjusted rate to lend them money. Obviously, worse credits, people that have the highest probability of defaulting, pay the highest rates. If you put a cap on rates that can be charged, what do companies do? They actually stop lending to the riskiest part of the population, and so their consumers will lose purchasing power, not gain purchasing power. You know, on the housing side, the one thing I remind people is the institutional accumulation of housing happened after the '08 financial crisis, when we had a massive glut of houses in the United States. Prices were plummeting, so the financial market stepped in and they put a support underneath the housing market. Right. And we can't forget how important these financial players are in times of stress.
Well, we should also say you worked for Goldman Sachs and were president there for a very long time, including during that financial crisis. But let's not relitigate some of that, but talk about someone you got to know during that time. Yeah. That was Kevin Warsh, who was a Fed governor and is now President Trump's pick to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. He's called for all sorts of reforms of the Fed. What do you expect from him in office?
So look, I think we're very fortunate to have Kevin to be the nominee. Kevin has a unique background coming in as the chair. As you said, he was a member of the Fed board before. He was there during the 2008 financial crisis. He was instrumental in that crisis. What I mean by that is when banks were going through stress, and we saw a lot of bank mergers, we saw a lot of assets being moved around the system, Kevin was the point person at the Fed. He was involved in every one of those discussions. And I truly believe without Kevin's expertise and without Kevin being there, we would not have come out of the 2008 crisis as well as we have. So he's very highly qualified. He's going to take the Fed back to its traditional sort of norms. I think Kevin's going to stay out of a lot of the non-financial issues. He's going to be involved, obviously, in setting interest rate policy. There is a pressure right now for interest rates to go lower. I think that he will probably follow through on the 1 to 2 cuts this year. Kevin also has a view that the Fed should not have the large balance sheet. The Fed went in and bought an enormous amount of securities. I think that Kevin will reverse that. I think he will be looking for the Fed to sell down their balance sheet. And on the regulatory front, I think Kevin is a traditionalist, believing that we need strong regulation in the United States, but it has to be regulation that works and allows the market to grow and allows the consumer to have access to capital. So I think he is actually the completely right choice in this period of time. And on Friday, when his nomination came out, the market spoke. Yeah. And I think you have to look at what the markets tell you because they're real-time feedback indicators. Right. So we saw the dollar strengthen by about 1%. We saw silver drop by 25%. We saw gold drop by 10%.
The president also spoke last night at a dinner and said he's going to sue Warsh if he doesn't lower interest rates. You take that as a joke?
Yes, I take it as a joke. Look, I think the president completely understands the independence of the Fed. Kevin has been a staunch advocate for independence of the Fed.
Well, he's got a confirmation process to go through, and we will see if Tom Tillis's request for the Department of Justice's probe into the current Fed chair stands in the way of actually getting him through.